I want to tell you a story. When I was 19 years old, I decided that it would be cool to start smoking. And I was working in New York City at the time. I think I was an intern at NBC in New York, and I just thought it would be cool to smoke. And it was awful in the beginning, as it usually is. You get dizzy, and I would look up at the tall buildings and just swoon and feel just terrible. But you know how it is if you keep at something, and it's a psychologically and biologically addictive behavior to smoke. And I smoked from 19 till 23, and it was I don't know how much money I spent on it. It's a gross habit, but it seemed like a cool thing to do at the time, and it was still not taboo to smoke, and you could smoke in restaurants and bars and stuff like that. And it was still kind of a cool thing to do. But when I was 23, I had a really stressful situation with a roommate, and this roommate ended up stalking me. They would call me on the phone every day at like 2 o'clock in the morning and leave these threatening messages, and it was awful. And I got to the point where I was so nervous I was substituting cigarettes for food. And instead of eating, I would just basically smoke all day. It would kill my appetite. I have this big pit of, tobacco smoke in my stomach, and it was all I could do to eat, maybe like some rice, steamed rice at the end of the night. And it got to the point where I had a friend come up to me, a few friends, and said, hey, we're concerned about your health. You're not eating. You're losing weight. And I just realized it was time to quit. I had to quit, but it was hard. It was really hard, and I knew that if I could quit for a day, that I would be able to quit. I'd never been able to make it through a full 24 hours. That's how badly I was, hooked into cigarettes. So what happened is that I'm getting a little light verb over here. What happened is that it got to like hour 23 in the day, and I was dying for a cigarette, and I put myself on a subway, and I took a long express ride. I think it was from like 125th Street all the way to 4th Street. It's an express ride. It's about a 20-minute ride, and maybe less. But the point is that I made sure that I'd be on the subway at hour 24, so that I wouldn't be able to have that cigarette when the clock struck 12. And I made it. And that's how I quit smoking. I was not able to smoke on the subway, obviously. And I was on the subway, and I made it the full 24 hours. And that's how I quit smoking. And then, it was hard, but I kept at it. And I started taking yoga classes, and I started eating better, and I saved money, and I got kind of a new lease on life. Now, why am I telling you this story? There's always a point. So the point is that I had a hard time figuring out how to tell stories. And I just recently came across this video by a guy named Dan Pink. He's a motivational speaker, does TED Talks, has written some books about sales and stuff. And he has this talk. It's a 2.5-minute talk, and it's called How to Pitch Like a Pixar Studio. And he basically breaks down Pixar movies, and I think a lot of movies, great story movies, all fall into the same kind of 5-step formula. And the way it works is like this. The first step is, once upon a time, there was a blank. Fill in the blank. Okay, this is usually the hero. In my story, it was me, the 19-year-old guy who started smoking. Every day, he would blank, or she would blank. And that's the second step. So what the person would do every single day. I would smoke every day. Until one day, blank happened. Now, that part I actually left out of the story. I think what happened is that my friends took me out to dinner one night, and I threw up because I couldn't stomach food because I'd been smoking all day. I hadn't eaten because of the stress. So that was the catalyst for change in the story arc. So until one day blank happened. Step number 4 is, and because of that, I decided it was time to quit smoking, and I put myself on a subway, and at hour 24 I was able to be without a cigarette, and from then on I was able to make it. And until finally blank happened. Finally, as I got a new lease on my health, and I started taking better care of myself, and I lived happily ever after. That's the story structure that you can always go to keep you anchored and not lose track of where you are in the story.